Hello! See if you can figure out what sort of product we're doing today. They sent me a t-shirt. Actually, it's pretty cool. A lot of t-shirts from manufacturers just have a logo on. This one has this whole sort of evolution of flight thing on the back, which I think is quite nice. So yeah, this is a RushFPV product, but it comes from STP Hobby, sort of one of their own companies. And this is a very lightweight 5-inch frame called the Aquilla. And let me get it out of the box and I'll show you what it looks like, because it is very lightweight looking. What you have, all sort of vacuum packed, is this, and you can see just how thin these arms are, which is interesting. I've never done a build like this before, and we've got some bits and pieces here. I think it's designed to take mostly a sort of 20mm stack, but it has got this special extension plate, so if you want to use a very long range Rush Solo VTX that goes up to a whopping 1.6 watts of power on 5.8, you can put that in as well. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to build this, but I think the first thing to do is just put it together as a sort of dry frame, just to see how it looks and compare to another frame, because I think it looks really interesting. Not quite sure how I'm going to build it, but it'll be interesting to check it out. So let's put it together, see what happens. Okay, so here's my quick dry fit of the components, and I think I've got it right. I had to look at some pictures of completed ones, and one thing I haven't done is put these on, which is sort of these struts that go under there. I'm not sure if that's like you must have, or that's for extra strength or not. But I can sort that out in the final configuration. Some bits I have put on which are optional, is there's this crossfire type antenna thing here. This is TPU stuff. There's a GPS holder here, another TPU, and there's the antenna holder there. Have to say, the carbon, and I'm no like expert on what carbon should sort of feel like or look like, but it feels really nice. It feels very smooth. It's been nicely milled on the edges. No sharp edges at all. Very strong, even though the legs are pretty skinny looking. This is going to be certainly an interesting build for me. Oh, and one thing a couple of bits I've missed out. You can put this thing on here, and this will take, you know, you don't really want a full-size GoPro, maybe a naked GoPro. They were kind enough to send me this Insta360 Go mount, but I don't have one, sadly, so can't do that. They're also in the packet. These are little protectors that go under here to land on. We've obviously got the strap to go on and bits like that. But yeah, these are obviously pretty small motor mounting screws. I'm not exactly sure what size they are. And it's either a 20mm stack, or you've got the sort of the diamond shape, more akin to sort of the Whoop stuff. We've also got, this is the holder for the tank solo, and that would go in this back in between these legs and those legs if we wanted to do that. So I'm not exactly sure what I would put on here yet, and I don't know if I've got the motors, but yeah, so far it feels lovely. It's just a case of what should I put on here. I really want to make a nice lightweight quad with a GPS that you know, might go a long way. I just don't know if I've got the right components, but I'm just going to have a look through all my spares and bits and pieces and see what I do have. And see what I can use here, because I'm really liking the frame. The actual feel of this is really nice. It's obviously light as anything you can think of. Anyway, onwards with figuring out some sort of build for this. So here is the finished article, all connected up together and looking pretty good, like it wants to fly. Had a little hover in the garden, that seemed okay, so we're ready to take it out. As I said, not perfect selection of components, just stuff I had left around, including these bi-blade props. And interesting configuration, because that flight controller just didn't have any useful terminals to solder, so we ended up having to solder center of the board, and smart audio is done via soft serial. And although I'd put the receiver there, I actually had so much space here. I had loads of space. This is a RushFPV Tank Mini on the back, and I've put one of the cherries on as well because they were quite good. So yeah, looking forward to flying this, and I'm going to be using, I had a quick word with Rush, and they said anything 850 to about 1300 would work on this. So I was going to go on the light side, and mainly because I already had an XT30 on there. The GPS, this is a Beaton 220. This didn't quite fit, so I ended up just cutting a little bit of the TPU and gluing that in. This is built for like the Beaton 180, so if you've got that, that'll fit in better, but that's going to hold up okay. How much does it weigh? Well, the quad as built without the lipo comes up as 227, and with the LiPo 326. So it's nowhere near the 250. I don't think you could do anything majorly to get rid of that weight. Although, you know, I haven't chosen my components, I haven't used anything outrageous there, unless you went really light on the motors and stuff. So it's not going to be a sub 250 gram, but still a light quad. Let's see how it does on this. Time to fly. Well, here we are. It's test time for the little Aquilla frame. Not quite sure how it's going to be. As I said, I put it together with spare off-cut bits essentially, so it should last like a long time with the right components. I don't necessarily have the right components, so it's really just going to be a bit of a test and see how it does. See how the frame feels really in the air, because this is about the frame, not about the build. So yeah, let's get on with it. So we're off on our test flight, and if you're all saying to yourself, hey, why is he taking off? He hasn't got any satellites. Yep, I know. I waited there for sort of 5 minutes or so, and I thought something's wrong here. We're not getting any sats. Now, when I went out in the garden and sort of sat it there on the floor, I got 5 sats in my garden, and for my garden, which seems to be in a satellite no-fly zone, that is about as good as it gets on one of these GPSs. So I thought all is good. I popped the top back on and took it to the field, but it just seemed we got nothing at all. Now, occasionally I've had problems locking down a lot of sats, and what I normally do is take off and have a quick fly around, and everything seems to come good. Not in this case. 0 satellites for both batteries. I tried. I just couldn't get a thing from them, unfortunately. But I thought, you know, I'm just going to fly and get on with it, because this is more about the frame than my build or lack of build finesse. So clearly there's something wrong in the setup or the GPS positioning or something like that, but I couldn't do much at the field. Anyway, all I was really trying to do on this one is have a fly around, get the feel for it, see how it performed. I'm just using 25 milliwatts to start off. Those little RushFPV tanks are a great series of VTXs. I've never had a problem with them. I mean, they haven't been the very best on 25 milliwatts, but they've been fairly good, and this is looking pretty good. I was surprised it was going as well as it did, because literally these are the 6S, I say in air quotes, compatible motors that I had with this quad called, I think, the XF140, which promised to be this 6S compatible 3-inch eSheen quad, and basically the motors would desync if you pushed it. But I figured for 4S on 5-inch props they would probably be okay, so that's what I tried. Over here we're just getting some interference from those trees. I'm sort of in line with them, but as we get here we go slightly past those trees and we're okay again. And yeah, that 25 milliwatts I think is holding up pretty good. Obviously the signal from the ELRS receiver is absolutely fine. I'm using the Namino module on the TBS Mambo radio. All is good there. So I'm not whizzing about too fast, but I'm not taking it easy. I'd say this is like a medium cruising speed, because I wanted to see how long I'd get from it. We're just using the little 850 milliamp hour 4S's here, although we could go up to about a 1300. At least that's what RushFPV told me. I just decided to keep it light and see what would happen, and I literally just cruised up and down and around, and eventually I got to just about 9 minutes. Basically I went until I got to 14 volts, which would be perhaps a little bit longer than I go for, and then I brought it in for landing, and I think that's a fairly good result from these little batteries. So after 9 minutes of that first battery, it's very clear we weren't going to get any satellites at all, and that was a problem to investigate. So I took it out and had a bit more of a flight where I'd go a bit faster and do some light acro. I also whacked the VTX power up to 200 milliwatts so we could see if we went a bit further, if anything would happen. First thing I noticed on this flight is it seems a little bit more shaky, and instantly I'm thinking oopsie. And I say oopsie because when I put this together, I thought, oh, I must get some thread lock on this, and then I couldn't find any thread lock, and then the day came up where it was like suitable weather to fly, and I was like, I'll just do it, and I'll have a quick check to see if any screws fall out. And I think things have loosened because this frame uses those little hex head screws, and you get really good ones you can tighten nicely, and then other ones where something just lets go and you try and tighten them up and it just ends up spinning in there and you damage the screws. These haven't got the world's best screws, and they really do need thread locking in there, and I couldn't find my thread lock. I'm going to have to order some more. So I think these have loosened off, and thus we're getting a much wobblier picture than we got originally. What I'm doing here is just going out to approximately 1 kilometre. That edge of this field here is about 1100 metres, so a kilometre-ish, and everything absolutely fine. The Express LRS receiver's good, the pitch on the VTX is good, everything looks quite good apart from the fact that it's shaking about a bit, which after I landed it seems to be the camera's come more loose than anything else. But yeah, it certainly seems to be able to live up to its sort of promise of delivering reasonable range, reasonable flight times. It's just a shame my GPS wasn't working and it looks all a bit shaky in this footage, really. One thing I did notice from doing a bit of light acro is I guess this thing is set to sort of get through the air very efficiently, and sort of, displacing as little air as it can makes it more aerodynamically efficient. One thing I noticed when I was doing sort of rolls and split S turns and things like that is how quickly it would drop out of the sky. It seemed to drop like a stone. When I'm doing stuff like this, a little sort of flick, you can just see how quickly that's falling. With a regular 5-inch quad, there's more mass to it and it's heavier, so you kind of expect it to fall faster, but because it's sort of wider and more spread out, it tends to sort of float a bit more. So this is the least floaty quad I've ever flown. It was really quite a different feeling, just the amount of drop you get so acro. Really quite interesting. I mean, it doesn't really matter because it's not a freestyle quad by any means, but you can fly it fast, you can do acro on it, but what you don't have is that real float time. So this is really a sort of long range-ish cruising style quad where you'd go out, you'd explore some stuff, you might take a camera, albeit a light one. I'd go either naked GoPro or one of the sort of Insta360 Go style things, and you'll be golden. But yeah, good to fly. The frame held up well. I checked it after. No screws had actually come out. Things were just a bit loose. So next time I'll tighten it up. Well, there you go. Not quite the flight I was hoping for on that day. But sometimes things don't go right the first time and we do some changes and we go and do it again, which is exactly what I'll be doing with this. But I wanted to share how far I'd got. Because I've had the frame for absolutely ages. I got this before I went into my knee surgery, so it's taken a long time to get a build and get a flight day. I didn't want to wait too longer to fix it all up. And it's a good excuse to come back to it and do some more testing on it. I did come back and have a look to try and figure out the problem with the GPS. I figured on the day maybe it was where that join was, and I tried like getting a screwdriver and sort of poking them in to see if I could make a change on that one. Didn't seem to work. First time I plugged this back into Betaflight, it took about a minute before it recognised I had a GPS. So I initially thought, oh, maybe there's a wire. So I tried prodding different bits of wire, like gently tugging, just to see if I could recreate the GPS disappearing, and I couldn't. So I've done some small changes to see if anything would help. I've changed the baud rate. I've moved this antenna slightly further away, just because this is, of course, a transmitting thing, and even though it's completely different frequency, you want to be as far away from transmitters to receivers as you can. Obviously, in something like this, we don't have a lot of room, but I took this back out in the garden, and 7 minutes it took, but I got the 5 sats again. And I'm thinking, did I do anything different the first time? Maybe I didn't have the top on, maybe I didn't have some of the stuff connected. So before I go, I will be doing another check in the garden, final check, make sure I get the battery on exactly how I would fly, and make sure I get sats before I go out again, because obviously I want to test stuff like rescue mode and see how far we can get. Now we know exactly how long we can get out one of those little 850s, and I'll probably do something to put a 1300 on just to see how it flies. There's a line somewhere where the weight of the larger battery is going to sort of displace the added flight time you might get from it. But 1300 doesn't sound too big, so we'll test it out. But yeah, this has been a fun, different build. The fact these are just made from spares that I had lying around, I think is quite cool. We get to make a nice little thing from there. And of course, I'll order some thread lock to tighten everything up. That camera a little bit shaky there, which I think is really contributing to that second flight's wobbliness. But you know, we'll come back and we'll try it again. I've got some other stuff coming in, which exactly the sort of stuff I want to test with this to give that a test as well. So that's all handy stuff. Anyway, so this is more about the frame, the Aquilla frame from STP and RushFPV. So if you're looking for something that can take a 5-inch, is reasonably light, and looking for something to do long range, then perhaps check these guys out. It's quite an interesting frame concept. Really, really weird for me. A completely different way to fly, as I mentioned. As soon as you stop, there's just no float. It just drops like a stone, which I thought was really interesting. Must say a lot about the aerodynamics of it, the fact it's just like, yeah, dropping instead of floating around like a regular one does. But that, interesting again. Anyway, I'll be back with this doing some more stuff and different sort of testing. Look out for those. In the meantime, if you want to check this frame out, there'll be some links down below. But I hope that review was helpful, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.